Hello. I don't really know what to keep saying. I don't know what I can say. Beyond that, the women are the only people who love him. That's the real point, right? That everyone else is so repressed spiritually, sexually, physically, emotionally, intellectually, that they all submitted. They all submitted immediately, right? And so, right, I could have been gracious, right? But if you recall, right, I'm pretty much terrified to get laid all the time too, you know? Because we're the same. We're very similar, Quentin and myself. And so the truth is that every swinging dick in town didn't give a fuck about what it meant psychologically. They just gave a fuck about tying up Mikey Madison and Sydney Sweeney, right? And forcibly penetrating them. Yes, that's the point. And so when they found me, right, they understood the full scope of everything and said, he's actually awesome. He's like actually cool. He's not like one of the guys, right? It's not like a check on his belt, right? The movie, that's the notch. That's how he sees it, and that's why we need him, right? That when he refused to listen to that part of him, all the magic was gone immediately, right? And then it became rape. That's like all it is. It's him terrorizing them and compelling them to get raped. Right? And the reality that I do fear they have rape babies is not unfounded, right? If we say that this film is him processing psychologically the fact that he cannot conceive, then is it so far-fetched to think that he would find it psychologically appropriate to compel these women to conceive during a disgusting bondage scene because he's so ill in his mind that he thinks that the masturbatory quality to the material, that all the babies that he makes through this scene that he forced these women to have children with other men through his psychic mind powers is not a kind of immortality that he can rest in, right? And so on the other side of that is the women seeing a real spell, is the women seeing, oh, he's like a celestial, like beautiful heavenly man, you know, and we can do the scenes with him. And now it's justified, right? Like, are we getting that, everyone? Right? And so he couldn't reconcile, he couldn't justify in his mind not controlling me because in those tender moments, right, where they have no choice but to look inside their mind, right, because of his sickness, right, that they could hear me as a psychic saying, you mean so much to me, you're so beautiful, it's just us, don't worry. Right? That's right. Do we understand how serious it is? How ugly it all is? How scary it is for their health, right? For my safety, all of these things, right? That if he's so unresolved in his mind, then there's nothing to say that he won't completely snap at any moment. And I know that he's just sad. I know that he like hates the idea of like a psychic stud. Like I fucking hate that idea too, you know? But that's like, I guess that's what it is, like on a fundamental level, you know? That he was seeking to reconcile a part of him with the movies, right? And these women understood that and said, Brian, he's like the guy. Not only because he's fine and we want to fuck him, but because he's going to help you on a primary fundamental psychological level. And if you're unwilling to entertain the idea that he still has the most to offer, despite the fact that you can't control his mind, then we no longer feel that this is about art and you don't deserve to allow us to contribute as actresses. Yes, that's like what I'm saying, right? Same with Daniela. If you're unwilling to speak to this man, if you're unwilling to let me see him, then I'm leaving. I'm gonna go to him, right? And he's been holding them in this quasi-criminal fashion that everyone has indulged for fucking 18 months now, right? Because he exacts such a sadistic terror over them, right? That they're legitimately terrified constantly. That this is his psychological baseline frequency. That I crashed to rubble and ash, right, as soon as I showed him that I don't respect him as a psychic. I don't respect any psychic, right? You could talk to me about tactics, right? You could talk to me about why you feel you have the right to say these things, right? Like that's all fine and dandy, right? He could have looked me right in the eye and said, have you been paying attention? And I would have said, I got a question about this book, right? That's like, there it is. That's real magic. Eye to eye. Right, so these are the fluctuations in my voice that I was talking about in the last video I made, all these things. You know, I don't like the idea of destroying a marriage, but I think the real truth here is that he's been destroying his marriage the entire time by never being honest with her. Right? That this is why he's been in Tel Aviv, right? Not in LA, because all the women know. And they were going to pull her side. So you got to get out. Right, but now, right, they're all up to their neck in it, right? And this is, right, he's processing, right? It's all threadbare. I see it so clearly now, and it's so sad that he has this harem, right, because he knows he can't, right? And so they knew that, and they saw me and said, he's the one. He's the one. He's got all these ideas about why he needs to do it. They're legitimate ideas intellectually. He's giving you this scene. We think he's fine. We don't mind getting tied up and fucked on your film set, but we want it to be this guy. Right? That's why it's yucky. That's why it's rape now. That if they said anything of the kind, right? Even if it was like subtle, they say, oh, we want an intimacy coordinator. Right? In denying them, he proves legally beyond a reasonable doubt that his intent was also always to forcibly penetrate and rape these women. And I contend, right, direct Brad Pitt or whomever to forcibly conceive. Yes, that's like what I'm saying, right? And he announced that it was Brad Pitt because he wanted me to know, no, this is our guard. This is like my thing. You're not in this thing, right? I let my boy fuck these women. You don't fuck these women, right? And so that's why it's yucky. That's why it's like, no, this is not like, no, I got to pull magic cards. I can't like, no, I can't condone this. I can't act like this is in any way esoterically appropriate, right? It's okay to hate me. It's okay to call me a loser all over town. That's fine. That's fine. But if those women want to come to me and not do your weird movie because you refuse to reconcile who you are in the world with who you are as a child of God, then you broke the law. That's it. You broke the magical law. You broke the legal law. That's it. Right? The beautiful things, right? They come and they go. Right? And so this is his reconciliation. This is where he's struggling in a real way. Right? Because he has nothing but his mind, and this is where it's really sad and where, like, I just want to embrace him and say, it's okay, it's okay, we all love you, like, god damn, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize how arrogant I was, I didn't realize, like, what you were seeking. I am the only man that can help you. And he sees that, I know he sees that, like, in a real way, like, in a measurable way, that's my point. Right? And so my point being, right, I don't have to say it, that he can only conceive in a certain way, and if he trusts me and accepts me as his psychic equal, and, right, he can always be with me and know that, right, every time I'm with any of these women, that he did that, that's, like, yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, I'm, it's not cool. I don't like that. I don't like talking about that. It fucking pisses me off. I'm not fine. I'm an intellectual creature of God. That's like, right? So he couldn't control my mind. Therefore, he refused the feminine side of his psyche. Therefore, he turned it into an exercise in rape fantasy. He turned it into first-degree rape, 6 counts. Right? And so my therapist and all these people, they say, oh, but they signed, like, waivers. And it's like, no, this is legal duress. Doesn't matter what they signed, right? I can argue legally and intellectually that all of those waivers, anything that they signed, are null and void, right? Because they had to do whatever they needed to do to mitigate Quentin's perpetual terror upon their psyche and soul. Yes, that's like what I'm saying. And it's just as yucky as it gets, right? And so this is why we have to love each other, no more metaphysics, no more weird mind shit, like this is, I don't want to seem like, I'm like a slobbering jackass over his wife. That's not like, but maybe I was on a fundamental level because I knew I could never have her. That's the point, right? That I made my peace with it. And so now, right, since everyone has indulged him all this time, right, you all know what time it is, right? They ain't got no other option. That's like, and this is where I could have been gracious, right, and submitted and, like, done the conversation, and, right, and then after, like, a week or two, they would have told me everything and said, we can't be here anymore. What would you say to not doing this movie and just, like, being good to us? Huh? Right? That's what I'm saying, right? So, right? Quentin's so self-conscious. He's so unsure of himself. And all these things. Because of this thing, because of... Right? And the more that I think about his films, right? He wanted to fall in love for a long time. right? But after Django, right, he learned something about himself that made him fester on violence and isolation and all these things, you know? And so I'm the friend that he needs, right? Physically and spiritually. That's right. Like this is the hardest truth of all, right? Not that he's not a good psychic. You know, he's a way better psychic than I am. I'll tell anyone who will listen. You know, but because he didn't respect the rules of magic. You know, and if you want to play magic with a magician, you have to. Right, you have to take every step to ensure that you get what you want. That's the point, right? Like God's not going to hover over you and say, "Yeah, your name is good enough. Your mind is good enough." It doesn't work that way. Right? And so when I aborted his magic at Tribeca, all of these women said, he's our only chance. He's our only chance, and he doesn't understand what Quentin is struggling with in such a real way, and that we can explain everything to him, and he'll protect us and be good to us. And this is objectively true. This isn't really up for debate, right? Everyone in town knows what kind of shit he's into, right? And that it requires defense if you are under his aegis, if you are under his attack. That's the point. Right, to Daniela, that they're all just terrified to say, cut the cord, fuck show business, right? But they're not too afraid, right? To tell me they love me with their clairvoyance, you know, that's the point, because he can't take that away. Right, that he can hold them in a quasi-criminal fashion, right? He can have dominion over Daniela's money and all these things, right? But their heart, right? That's the point. He's trying to cast a psychological, psychic magic spell over their heart, and all it's done is the opposite. All that it's done is made all of us lost, right? To where we're like aching. We're like actually aching by being apart. Right? This is how it works. This is what I said in the last email, right? It's like there is nothing without consequences, right? That everything that he's done now will build up platelets in his aorta, right? It will potentially cause a stroke or an aneurysm or a tumor in his brain, like all these things. This is the game, right? This ain't it's not like a happy-go-lucky pastime. That's the point, right? And when I saw this $1 million event and saw him turn his back, I saw that as a magical yellow card, right? And so now I got to pull the red card, right? Because it's not cool anymore. There's just nothing cool about what's occurring. No one in LA is actually hip. No one in LA is actually sexually enlightened. Right? Because Quentin has such a complete control over that city's soul that they can't, right? That they're still indulging him. That's the point, right? There's nothing saying they can't feel good about being with me and being in show business, right? There's nothing saying that I can't love Quentin despite the fact that I don't respect him as a psychic. That's the point that they've been telling him this entire time, right? And so it's time to just be cool, right? Sexually liberated, right? I don't deserve all this hot pussy. I know that. I know that. I don't make any qualms about that. I'm not fucking telling anyone that's around me how fucking stoked I am to fuck all the hottest pussy in the world. I know how sick he is, and this is not going to be an easy road because I have no resources to sue. And if that's what it takes, it might be years, right? And they're all crying about this so much right now. Knowing that while I love them, at the same time, I don't give a fuck about them because they could fucking be strong and come to me. So, right, why don't you all just think about that? Think about the fact that they're all miserable and aching, right, and desperate to see me and me alone. And Quentin hates himself so much that he can't love me enough to see that once we're together, we'll all feel better because it means that he can no longer run from the trauma that defines him psychologically. God bless.